I grew up in a time when it was not only okay to love and to say that you wanted to be in love, but people dared to love. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach. And today what I want to talk about is the vast number of people who are like throwing in the towel on real love. And I emphasize on real love. So as I was doing some research, I wanted to just kind of think about how people are perceiving love. And so there are a lot of musicians out there right now that are implying through their lyrics that they're done with it. It's too much heartbreak. It's not worth it. And one of the people that I wanted to spotlight today, and I'm really not so much spotlighting the individual as much as I am a particular song that she produced. And so I want to talk a little bit about SZA, and who is an R&B singer who's had some amazing wins in her career, some amazing music. But she's oftentimes talked about how the relationships that she's engaged in have left her very disenchanted around love. And there's one song in particular that really caught my eye, especially through the video, and that's the one on Kill Bill. And so while she has not explicitly said, she's giving up in her lyrics, but when you watch the video, it sort of implies that she's extremely frustrated. Now, the one thing you'll note about this video, if you've ever watched it, first of all, I am not a proponent of violence at all. Whether it's the movie Kill Bill or the video, that sort of implies that, you would take your lover out, the person who has broken your heart. What I understand about what I think she's trying to convey is we all have, we have our spirit that oftentimes dares us to love. Our spirit, our soul wants us to engage in love with, those that we have a connection with. That is why we are here. That's one of the objectives of life, is to learn to love and to love wholeheartedly. Okay. So the spirit, the soul is open to that. The heart is oftentimes open to that until it has had some wounds. And if we have not processed through those wounds, the heartache that comes as a natural part of love, the heart can sometimes be resistant to love. So now we've got the soul or spirit, and we've got the heart, and then we've got our intellect, our humanness. It's where our ego sits. And the mind is always logical. So the mind is always going to be calculating to see whether or not this is going to be safe for us to engage in love. So as I'm watching this video, it's so apparent to me that she is creatively expressing that animal nature in her, the part where her heart is aching, her mind is saying the natural logical thing to do is take these people out. I don't think she means it literally. But what I do understand is that oftentimes when we are grieving, when we feel like we've been misled, when we feel like we've been manipulated, when we feel misunderstood, unseen, unheard, engaged in something that dishonored us because maybe we didn't even listen to our own intuitive guidance, because sometimes we know we're not even supposed to be in a relationship, but we're in it anyway, and then we feel compelled to stay in it. So then when it goes awry, we oftentimes feel like a fool. So I wanted to kind of dissect this song around Kill Bill. And then I want to talk about whatever happened to all of the music that really encouraged us to love. So let's jump in here. So as you watch the video of Kill Bill, there were at least three, but there were several others, at least three codependent patterns that I saw pop out to me and was a glaring sign. And as always, I want us, as I'm going through this sort of analysis, I want you to be thinking about, where has this popped up for you in your relationship? Because God knows with the people who I've dated in my past, I have seen and had these experiences. I think about how sometimes emotionally immature I really was, But where did many of us learn how to really be in relationship? If we've not seen healthy relationships, if our parents didn't talk to us about being in relationships, we're all out here just trying to do the best that we can. And so it's no wonder that codependent patterns like an obsessive attachment would show up in the Kill Bill video. I'm gonna come back to that. Fear of loss. And then finally, identity infusion. So as I was watching the video, I was like, the glaring piece was obsessive attachment. And obsessive attachment is basically, it's where we have this unhealthy attachment, not just connection, because we're all connection, but attachment is sort of like, I found you, I'm going to hold on to you. It is a form of control. It's where we, it's like we are so happy that we have found this person that the thought of losing them will take us out, right? And so what then happens is we begin to suggest this unhealthy dependency on them to be in our life. And then in order to have emotional fulfillment, and really your emotional fulfillment is not attached to that individual. Your emotional fulfillment, your sense of contentment, your sense of, true connection, true love is not attached to anyone. It's simply connected. It means that it comes from within you. It is not because of them. It is an exchange, but it is not that this person must do what I think they need to do. It's not that they have to be in your life in order for you to be fulfilled. That is when we start getting into attachment, and control follows right behind that. This is why people get insecure when their mate switches up the patterns, doesn't come home at the same time, or wants to do something that doesn't include them. They start feeling like they're unloved. And that's because you may have an unhealthy attachment and not just a connection to the person. In other words, you've attached your happiness, your sense of self-worth, your identity to the person and to the relationship. And the minute that you do that, if that goes away, or if that shifts in any way, your identity, your sense of self-worth is going to go with it because it's attached to it. Opposed to being in a relationship. See, what I don't believe in, and this is something that has come up in music lyrics over the millennia, is that people, you do 50 and I do 50. Like we 50-50 in the relationship. I don't even know what that is. And I've been married twice, What we want is for people to come whole to a relationship. You come whole and I'll come whole. And when we put our two wholes together, we become interdependent, where I can bring my fullest expressed self, you can bring your fullest expressed self, and we make something even bigger and stronger. But if I'm 50% and I'm relying on you to fill in the holes and the gaps within me, which might be a bottomless pit, first of all, that is not the responsibility of that other person, and it's insatiable. So the person will become exhausted at trying to meet all of your needs. It's virtually impossible. We are all responsible for meeting our own needs. This person is just sort of dancing in the game of life with you. They are like a collaborator, a partner in the relationship, but not your source. So when we have an obsessive attachment, we begin to think that they are the source of our happiness. And when you give somebody that type of power over you, it is no wonder that your world becomes obliterated if something should shift. So that was the first thing that I saw with the characters portrayed in the video. The second one is a fear of loss. And I've talked about this in other videos. This fear indicates an inability to function independently and a reliance on the partner for emotional stability. This a lot of times comes from our childhood. Anytime that we have had, especially for females, if your dad was not there, and for males, if your mom or the mother figure in your life wasn't consistently there. Because, for girls, the first man she falls in love with is her dad. But if she didn't have that, then she will, it's just a natural way that our humanness operates. It will find a way to augment that. And so it's trying to figure out, our ego side of us is just trying to figure out, how do we navigate this world? So what does love look like for us? Does it mean that we subordinate our will? Does it mean that, does it mean that we should hold on to the person? We're trying to figure out what that is. So the point here is this fear of loss creates a strong sense of anxiety within you. And so this is where we start trolling, watching people's social media, listening to their recorded messages, putting them under an inspection light and an investigative practice of figuring out who they're talking to. Why are they talking to them? Did you look at her differently than you looked at me? All of this is coming from this intense fear of anxiety fueled by a fear of loss. A fear of loss can come in a lot of different ways. There's an old saying, I'd rather love and lost than never to have loved ever or loved again, right? I think there's nothing further than the truth. When you have truly been in love, and that love that is connected but non-attached. And that's because in all love, there is some loss. I have one of my clients whose husband died unexpectedly. She says all the time that she had expected for them to retire together and to live out the rest of their years together, but it didn't work out that way. And so there was loss. There is loss. Now, it's taken her some years now, a few years, to really kind of heal from that, going from this place of I'll never love again to her actually being open to loving again. But in that gap, she's been able to reflect back on the relationship, the things that really worked in the relationship and the things that didn't work very well in the relationship. But the beautiful thing is with this particular friend and client, she didn't attach her identity so much to her husband that she felt like she needed to die along with him or transition along with him, or she should stop living because the marriage ended prematurely due to death. Loss comes from sometimes people grow differently. They grow apart. That's not a negative thing. That is not a negative thing. I personally have been married twice, and I recognize that no one gets married to get divorced. They don't. But the reality is, because many of us don't really know how to enter into the relationships, sometimes we don't even have the tools to really go into it with the right energy and spirit and intention from the get-go. So if you get in it and then you find that along the way, you kind of want something else, you can't be so attached to the relationship that you fear losing it, and you ignore the fact that your spirit, your soul is really, and your life is directing you to go in a different direction. Okay, so there can be a loss due to divorce or breakup. But as I look back personally on my marriages, when I tell you I love my husbands, I remember one time my mother and my sister, I was having a conversation with them. You know how your family is, they throw shade. So I was saying, I have had amazingly successful relationships. And so, of course, they come back at me like, how can you say that? You've been divorced twice. And I said, because I don't see the divorces as a loss for me. I see them as a win. Because first of all, I went into it with my eyes wide open and my heart open and willing to work at it. Now, it didn't work out for a 60-year stint, but for the time that we were together, I grew so much. And the time after it, because we have decided and chosen to heal from it and to be friends after it, because if I can love you enough to marry you, surely I can love you enough to be friends with you, because friendship is the undergirding of all relationships. Then it is just such a beautiful experience. We don't have to be in this situation where we villainize our former lovers or spouses. We just don't. That is a choice that we make. So I told my mother and my sister, I was like, I really don't feel like it was a loss. I feel like it was a win for me because I gained so much from it. And my prayer at the conclusion of each of the marriages, not the conclusion of the relationships, but the marriages, my prayer was, I pray that I have made their lives better than whence I found them, because I knew that they had done that for me, right? So there's this opportunity to really be fully in love, but sometimes we're not fully in love. What we are trying to do is control the situation. And we're trying to control because we have a fear of loss and because we have an obsessive attachment. Finally, I want to talk about identity infusion, where there's this thing of you complete me. And I started talking about that a little bit before. I had a friend who she only identified herself as Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Michael Smith, not her name. I was like, girl, that is not your name. Your name is Mary Elizabeth, and you were Mary Elizabeth before you got married. So there's this identity infusion where sometimes when we get married, we think we have to lose a part of ourselves in order to be in the partnership with someone else. That is a dangerous place to be, because in my friend's case, when she ended up getting divorced many years later, but she still ended up getting divorced. She was completely at a loss. And the loss was because of her enmeshment and how she saw herself. And this is just the way that we're trained a lot of times, that you give up everything, especially women, give up names, we give up identities, we give up all this stuff to be in this relationship. And then when the relationship didn't last for 60 years, it's kind of like, well, who am I now? And she really had to go through a lot of sort of struggle and unpacking to kind of figure out and get back to the essence. And it's taken her, to be honest with you, probably about 10, 15 years to really, because of course she's trying to raise kids in the process of it, to really get back to the essence of who she is as a woman. So we want to be very intentional and very conscientious about making sure that we are not enmeshing our identity into the relationship, because there is you, there is them, and then there's this beautiful relationship that we are creating. So I'm going to close out this segment with whatever happened to the music and the lyrics around being bold and daring to love. I see a lot of times now, especially with younger generations, I hear people talking a lot about sex. I don't hear people talking a lot about love. I hear a lot of people talking about, maybe they think they're making love, which is not the same thing as like really fully being in love and being fully expressed in a relationship where each individual can show up as their most powerful self, because true love is unconditional. Right? True love allows each party to fully express themselves. True love allows for communication. Some of the best advice that I got from two very wise women. One was my Aunt Dot, and her advice is start out how you gonna hold out. That's what she gave me before my first marriage. I have never forgotten that, because what she really was saying is don't create this fallacy, this facade in your marriage. Start out how you're going to hold out so that your partner can actually get to know you, and you know you. So you're showing up as your full self all the time. That requires some self-reflection to really know who you are, to be unapologetic about it, and to reveal that to your partner before you get into matrimony, okay? The other wise woman is my mentor, Susan Taylor, editor emeritus of Essence Magazine. And her counsel at a different stage in my life was the best person you could ever marry is your best friend. And I just thought that was such great counsel and something that I am fully experiencing at this stage in my journey. Because, in my former relationships, I can't quite say that I had formed like a deep friendship, like what I really understand friendship to be now. It was more like around the fairy tale of love. The fairy tale of what love is, men sweeping you off your feet and you having a lot of stuff and all of that kind of stuff. But now I focus a lot more on, do we value the same thing? Are we compatible? That was something I didn't look at before, is being compatible. It's going to be hard to sustain love if you're not in a relationship with somebody who is actually compatible. Like you all like many of the same things. You enjoy their synergy there, right? There is a sense of willing to be vulnerable and connected through communication. because it takes a lot of courage to really speak your truth, because none of us want for our partner to leave, right? But you can't be in a relationship and really not tell the truth. So my partner and I, we were talking recently about how much our relationship has grown and expanded because we are starting to get into this practice of really telling each other the truth. Now, we do that in a way that is empathetic, that is compassionate and understanding, like we understand each other. I do think it is an opportunity for us to take care of the little ones that exist within each of us. Each of us has that little child, that wounded child that's inside of us. So when you're in a partnership, you don't want somebody who's going to continue to wound that side of you. So there needs to be that type of compassion and connection so that you can have clear, concise communication with each other. And you've got to have somebody who you're willing to go to the mat with and go to the mat for, meaning you're willing to have conflict, and the conflict not break the relationship. All relationships have conflict, and conflict can make your relationship stronger if you don't allow it to be fatal and forever. So those are my tips for today. Don't throw in the towel on love, baby, because love is an indication that you are living. And a part of love is heartbreak. But if you can take that heartbreak and flip it and figure out what it is that you were meant to get out of that relationship and use that to power you to become a better, higher version of yourself, oh my God, the next person that you're with is going to be that much stronger, that much more compatible. You don't have to end love because you have had one or two heartbreaks. Learn what caused you to attract those partners and what it was that you're supposed to get out of it. And then that is what is going to transform your life. And if you need support, I'm here for you. I want to invite you to my Conquer Codependency Bootcamp, which is one of the ways that you can begin to learn how to build trust in your decision-making on the type of partners you're getting into relationship with. That's where it starts. Can you trust yourself to select partners that are compatible for you? The Conquer Codependency Bootcamp, 30 days, transform your life. And if nothing else, I want to invite you to leave a comment for me. I want to understand where you are. What did you think about the Kill Bill video? What did you take from it? Have you ever felt that way? I have. I have to tell you in another episode about the situation that happened to me one time when I found one of my boyfriends in a very compromising situation and how Kill Billish I was. It wasn't quite that, but I definitely was outside of myself. And how I was able to get myself back to center so that I don't have that kind of experience anymore. And I hope that you don't either. I'm Tracey Knight. I'm your codependency coach. And I want to remind you that today is the day that we begin to take back, transform, and win at the game called life. I'll see you soon.